talk about just something truly astonishing. Like, usually they'll at least pretend they're following the law. The FAA had the decency to invent some completely bogus explanation, right? But in the case of the Coastal Commission, they just came right out and said it. Nope. The Air Force is on board with doing more launches from Vandenberg. The military wants it. Obviously, SpaceX wants it. A bipartisan letter from members of Congress, some of the most liberal, some of the most conservative, want it. This is important towards U.S. national security. But we're going to say no for no legitimate reason other than that we don't like some of the completely unrelated political opinions that the CEO of this company is offering. It is astounding.
Look, I would love to just focus on the success of SpaceX during Flight 5 and the fact that they caught the booster with the Mechazilla chopsticks during the unexpectedly expedited launch. But I have to tell you about some new issues brewing with a different agency, this time in California. A video I did about the problems between SpaceX and the FAA is now the 4th most watched video on Ellie in space, so I think you guys are curious to know what's going on. I originally reached out to Kevin Kiley, a congressman from California, to interview him about his questioning of the FAA administrator that I strongly believe expedited the launch license from the FAA for Flight 5. He agreed to do that interview, but just in the last few days, we have new controversy, this time with the California Coastal Commission. SpaceX, the expert in innovation, is now having to become an expert in litigation. So in this video, we're going to ask Kevin why he feels so compelled to speak up for SpaceX and what is the new drama going on with the CCC.
So I made a video, you might not know this, with you at the very beginning. Now it's the 4th most watched video on my channel. It's titled, Elon Musk calls on FAA chief to resign after telling lies, according to SpaceX.
Okay. So my question, though, is it a safety issue? Is that why it's being delayed?
I think it is. I think
are the reasons for this delay, which is, moving the launch back from what was previously communicated, are the reasons for the delay safety related?
Holy
yeah, that's actually how I was introduced to who you are. So glad that you spoke up during that. And so tell me why you're getting involved with SpaceX and the current state of regulation versus innovation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've actually been a fan of SpaceX for quite a while. I had the chance to tour their facility in Hawthorne a number of years back. But I'm now in my first term in Congress. And I guess it was a couple things that sort of happened in conjunction where you had this, record-breaking launch, like one of I think the highest, into orbit since the lunar program, the Apollo program, and all these other firsts that happened with it that SpaceX was responsible for. And then the administration just says nothing. There's no comment on it. There's no congratulations. And then at the same time, they're going after SpaceX with these completely frivolous fines. And then they say, we're going to delay Starship by a couple months for these totally bogus reasons. So those things, in combination, actually a few days before that clip you just showed, I gave a speech on the floor kind of going through all of that, congratulating, SpaceX and the astronauts and everyone involved.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate SpaceX on the Polaris Dawn mission, which is the first of 3 planned missions in the program and took astronauts in an elliptical orbit 870 miles from Earth. So given what a tremendous asset this company is, it makes it all the more stunning that the company is being targeted in multiple ways and for frivolous reasons. Recently, the FAA fined the company $633,000 for trivial non-safety related reasons. And more concerningly, the agency has delayed Flight 5 of Starship for 2 months, again, for non-safety related reasons.
Highlighting just how ridiculous it is that our agencies are trying to stymie their progress, especially given how important SpaceX is to the U.S. national interest right now, among other things. And then, kind of looked at it in terms of this is a great example of how the modern day American bureaucracy has such misguided priorities a lot of times.
Yesterday, FAA Administrator Michael Whitaker testified before the House Aviation Subcommittee. In response to my questions about his agency's fines and the delays they've imposed on SpaceX, he made a number of statements that appear to be completely false. For example, he said that SpaceX launched without a license. That's simply not true. So there are two possibilities. Either number one, he doesn't know what's going on at his own agency, or number two, he deliberately deceived a congressional committee. Either possibility raises serious questions about his fitness to lead the FAA. I have sent a letter along with questions for the record to Administrator Whitaker, which he is compelled to answer, to explain his false testimony. And I'd implore him to look at this chart. Objects launched into space over time. The point where the United States breaks away from Russia and China and sees absolutely exponential growth is when SpaceX started launching rockets. This company and the broader commercial space industry are tremendous national assets. And those seeking to hold back their progress for, at best, arbitrary bureaucratic reasons are acting directly against our national interest. I yield back.
I gave that speech on the floor of the House, and then it just so happened that the head of the FAA, Whitaker, was coming in to one of my subcommittees. I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which has the Aviation Subcommittee. So he was coming in to talk about Boeing, which is, of course, an interesting juxtaposition in its own right when you have like SpaceX who's going to rescue the Boeing, astronauts.
Yeah.
But it was actually about sort of their plan related to their actual planes. But I figured while he was in, I might just ask him about what's going on with the FAA and its regulation of SpaceX. So I basically didn't want to get into debating with him the particular things they've claimed are happening because you only have a few minutes and he'd filibuster. I wanted to, like your clip just showed, just kind of like ask him, like, prove to me that this is really a safety issue and that there's any justification for it.
Are the reasons for this delay, which is, moving the launch back from what was previously communicated, are the reasons for the delay safety related?
And then I asked him at the end, well, what could we do to get this launch back on track? And he said, well, they have to comply with regulations, which they were clearly doing. But, it was just astounding to me how much he just completely, I don't want to use the word lied, but because maybe he was just badly misinformed, but presented provably false information to a congressional committee. And so I quickly followed up with him after that saying, all right, do you want to explain to me why you said all of these things that are not true? And he actually hasn't even got back to us yet.
That was going to be my next question. Did he ever provide this evidence that you were looking for?
So I wrote him a letter and he hasn't responded to that, although we also have submitted what are called like questions for the record. And those he's compelled to respond to, although, the timeline is not necessarily clear. So we'll get probably something back at some point, but nothing yet.
That is, and yeah, I was surprised to see that because I was kind of tuning into, I've been covering Boeing Starliner as well, and I was like, wow, I'm so glad that you brought up Starship, during that discussion, which wasn't talking about SpaceX. Elon Musk is certainly not liked by everyone right now, and he's been talking about these unfair, treatment from several different three-letter agencies, but it was nice to see you step in and talk about that. So tell me too, why you were so concerned with the FAA chief not having incorrect information or lying.
Well, I think it's just sort of on its face something that's incredibly problematic when you have the head of a major agency who doesn't feel the need to be truthful to Congress. We're, after all, responsible for overseeing them. We fund them. And if he thinks he can come in and just present overtly false information, that's a big problem. But it's not just that he's presenting false information. It's that very false information which has been used as the pretext to delay this massive history-making launch, which now that it's actually happened, it's bewildering that they wanted to stop this. You've seen the reaction it's produced for millions, maybe billions of people in our country and around the world. It's hard not to be just excited and moved by the sheer scale of this human achievement and the beauty of watching it unfold and just the thought of what it's now going to make possible. And that we had these petty bureaucrats for the pettiest, most nonsensical of reasons trying to say, we're going to stop that from happening. Imagine that you've invented a reusable rocket where the booster can be caught in the same tower that it's launched from, but you're not able to do it because of a regulatory, constraint that has absolutely nothing to do with safety. It's mind-boggling.
It is one of the hardest engineering feats. And I've been covering space news for several years now. A lot of my peers in the space community really didn't think that it would be successful on the first try. So the fact that they aced it on their first attempt really just makes these agencies that are trying to slow down this progress look ridiculous.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the reasons why we just need to get the FAA out of the picture. We're working on some legislation right now that will do that, that will make it so that the Office of Commercial Space Transportation is actually removed from the jurisdiction of the FAA, because they've created a lot of headaches. They're not well suited to this policy area. It's really they're kind of space adjacent, right? And this is the only area where they're involved with regulating anything to do with space. So we just want to get them out of the picture and make that office independent. I think that would actually help some. But I mean, the broader issue is as you say, it's like we have bureaucracies that are not adapted to enabling progress and enabling innovation, and their entire sort of instinct and almost they see it as their mission is to get in the way, to slow things down. And that's a big problem. And it's a remarkable that you have, SpaceX that's been able to, become this world leading company that has given the United States this massive exponential advantage when it comes to space, when it comes to the tonnage we're putting into orbit and everything else, in spite of, having to work oftentimes against this entire bureaucratic apparatus.
A lot of people told me, my coverage of the FAA issue and the questions that you had for Administrator Whitaker, they think that really helped expedite the license for Flight 5. Do you believe that your sort of questioning helped I mean, I was in Paris. I thought that it was going to be in late November, like the FAA originally stated, and kind of to everyone's surprise, okay, they actually are going to go October 13th. Do you think that you played a role in that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I hope it was helpful. I don't know exactly what was the deciding factor at the end of the day, but I did want to bring at least greater public attention to it, and I also wanted to sort of get him on the record saying, all right, what needs to happen for this launch to move forward? And since I think he said something like got to comply with the regulations, so maybe that provided something of an opening. But I'm not really sure. Honestly, it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other what caused it to get moved up. But the fact that it did was a great thing for our country, a great thing for all humanity, I think. And I'm excited about Launch 6.
Even though it got moved up, it was still ready to fly in August. So,
That's right. So it should have been a lot sooner.
It still is hindering, right? This has ripple effects.
That's true.
Do you think that most people understand? It's so frustrating that people, they don't like Elon, so they don't like SpaceX. And where would we be without SpaceX? What SpaceX is doing is so important, not just for people here in Texas or people in California or United States. I mean, do people really understand what's going on?
Well, I think that it is not well understood just how important of a company SpaceX is. When you look at the now exponential lead that the U.S. has over China, Russia, every other country, when it comes to space, when it comes to launches, when it comes to tonnage into orbit, and how important that lead is in terms of the very important national security functions and everything else. I don't think it's well understood just how sort of single-handedly SpaceX has accomplished that. I mean, I think I've seen episodes like 95% of tonnage to orbit is now launched by SpaceX. Maybe it's going to be like 99 once Starship really gets going. I mean, that is astounding, and the fact that this has been done by in the commercial sector by a private company, by a company that has again and again and again defied the odds. Proved the naysayers wrong. A company that, I mean, if you look at the early history where they had the 3 failures in their first launch, and kind of like that fourth one was, maybe the company doesn't move forward if that fails, and how it was just hanging on a thread, and they were able to triumph with that launch and have just turned it into this unbelievable company that's doing things that no one ever thought possible. I think that story does need to be, told. I think a lot of people are aware of it, but it's such an incredible story for California, which is where it started, and for the whole country. And it's something that we can really take pride in. And I think that maybe if that gets more broadly understood, then it would be harder for some of these very petty people and these bureaucracies to try to throw roadblocks in the way.
I'm still in shock that they did it on their first attempt. Like, people don't understand. A booster has never been caught by a tower ever. This is like crazy. How are people slowing this down?
Well, even Elon said, I think in 2022, he was like, yeah, success is one of the possible outcomes, but maybe not the most likely one. Maybe this is kind of crazy, but it's, I like the videos that actually kind of show, the one that is most commonly viewed, it looks like, is kind of just the very end of it. But when you can actually watch the booster flying down, you kind of see the precision that was required for this.
It's crazy.
It's incredible.
It's absolutely. I've talked to so many, space junkies that really thought it was just going to explode, and it didn't. So, take that, FAA.
By the way, if you're already yearning for another Starship launch, this one might come sooner than we're used to. That's because the FAA has already approved Flight 6 with another catch, and Flight 6 will be the last time SpaceX launches a version 1 of Starship. SpaceX will start flying V2 or version 2 of Starship, starting with Ship 33 on Flight 7. Now, the V2 Starships will also feature the version 3 of the Raptor engine, which, as you can see from this awesome model from Space Rocket Lab, is a very lean design. We've seen a few pictures of the V3 Raptor engine. In fact, ULA's Tori Bruno thought that this was a partially assembled engine, but no, this is in fact what it is, and it is very much simplified from the other previous versions. It truly is amazing how many parts were eliminated, and if you want to see one of these up close, you can order your own model from my friends at Space Rocket Lab. This is an extremely high quality 3D printed model, and I'm happy to have it as part of my pretty extensive collection back there. Space Rocket Lab also makes rocket models, including the most detailed Starship model I have ever seen. I've been sent many 3D printed models before, but these are by far the most high quality that I've seen, and that's because Space Rocket Lab takes the time to sand down and paint the models after they are printed. As you can see, they pay attention to every little detail. You can support my channel and support a small business by ordering yourself a model, and you can save 15% using my code at checkout. Again, use my code Ellie15 to save 15%. I will leave the link in the description of this video and pin it in the comments. Let's get back into the video.
A lot of people would agree with this statement, but in your own words, do you feel that Elon Musk is being unfairly targeted for his political views, and that this is also unfair against SpaceX?
Well, we know that he is, at least in one case, because they said it in the case of the California Coastal Commission. I mean, talk about just something truly astonishing. Like, usually they'll at least pretend they're following the law, or that they're, at least the FAA had the decency to invent some completely bogus explanation, right? But in the case of the Coastal Commission, they just came right out and said it. Nope, the Air Force is on board with doing more launches from Vandenberg. The military wants it. Obviously, SpaceX wants it. A bipartisan letter from members of Congress, some of the most liberal, some of the most conservative, want it. This is important towards U.S. national security. But we're going to say no for no legitimate reason other than that we don't like some of the completely unrelated political opinions that the CEO of this company is offering. It is astounding.
Now, before we get into talking about why this action from the CCC is so ridiculous, let's talk about what led to this. So SpaceX requested to increase the number of satellite launches from Vandenberg Space Force Base from 36 to 50 per year. But this has resulted in a new battle. SpaceX wouldn't be the only one benefiting here. This increase was intended to support more frequent military space missions, making it a federal activity. SpaceX is, after all, one of the most important contractors at Vandenberg, launching payloads for both private enterprise and government objectives. Because of this, the Space Force doesn't need the California Coastal Commission's permission to launch from Vandenberg, but it is required to reach an agreement to mitigate the effects, according to the Times. So what's the issue? Why is it so difficult to reach an agreement? Well, as you'll see in this clip, the CCC, which is responsible for protecting California's coastline, cited concerns over the environmental impact, particularly focusing on the effects of sonic booms from the launches. But here's where things get weird. In a significant decision, the CCC voted 6-4 to reject this increase. Their decision wasn't solely based on environmental concerns, but is also heavily influenced by Elon Musk's political views, and they just come right out and say it. And it's on video, so there is proof. And that is why, following the rejection, SpaceX filed a lawsuit against the CCC, claiming that the decision was influenced by political bias against Elon Musk rather than genuine environmental concerns. SpaceX argued that their launches have minimal impact on coastal resources. And so now you're kind of caught up, so we can get into the discussion.
We are talking about SpaceX in this, and I will say, and I just want to put it out there, you know, as a person in this process, as was mentioned earlier today, we're an appointed body. There's the politics and policy and science. They mix in these spaces. It's real. This company is owned by the richest person in the world with direct control over what could be the most extensive global communication system on the planet. And just last week, that person was speaking about political retribution on a national stage, and it was very glib, but yet he was standing next to a candidate that openly promotes and is working to normalize that language, and we have to push back against that.
Right now, Elon Musk is hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods and attacking FEMA while claiming his desire to help the hurricane victims.
I appreciate the apolitical nature under which you all work, but I do share some concern from the Commissioner Wilson brought up because of the fact that, you know, last year we did see, you know, the owner of Starlink shut down Starlink when one of our allies was going to attack one of our adversaries.
But here we're dealing with a company that is the head of which has aggressively injected himself into the presidential race and made it clear what his point of view is. My understanding was that they would be here today on Zoom. I am very concerned that even after meeting with me, expressing my feelings.
Chair.
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. They did participate on Zoom today.
It's not the other companies. This is about SpaceX increasing their launches, not the other companies increasing their launches. So
it's mind-blowing. It really, I mean, were you shocked to see this new development with the CCC after everything you've gone through in the past few weeks with the FAA?
I wasn't shocked that they got in the way. I guess I was shocked just how, honest. I mean, maybe that's the wrong word, but just they didn't even try to hide what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they have completely turned the mission of their commission upside down, which is to protect the beauty of the California coast, not to, be a political censor or to stand in the way of U.S. national security and other interests.
Yeah, I mean, Elon has talked about that the FAA administrator needs to resign. He's now saying that these folks on the commission should resign. Do you agree with that? Do you think there should be kind of punishment or penalty for this behavior?
I think in the case of Administrator Whitaker, I think that absolutely what he has done has called into question his fitness to lead the FAA. And if he does not produce satisfactory responses to my questions, then I think that that is something that will need to seriously consider. And then in the case of these commissioners, I mean, yeah, I would say so. The people who would come out and say that they're going to completely ignore the mission of their agency and simply make decisions based upon whether they agree politically with the person that is making a given request, that shows they're completely unfit for the job. In this case, this wasn't a conservative or liberal thing. Like we wrote a letter to the commission in August saying that you should just approve this increased cadence out of Vandenberg, or out of Vandenberg, and we cited the benefits to national security, the benefits to broadband connectivity, the benefits to fighting wildfires in California, actually. It was this technology, Starlink has been used for it. And this was completely bipartisan. Ted Lieu had signed it. Obviously, I signed it. Several other Republicans and other Democrats in the area around Vandenberg did. So completely bipartisan, and the Air Force itself was on board. And so it's just, for them to come out and say, in spite of that, we're going to find a political reason to say no. It goes beyond, I think, just California being a liberal state. It's that we have people in positions of authority that simply have no regard for the public interest or the responsibilities of their office.
Why do you think so many of these three-letter agencies are really overstepping or overreaching with what they're even supposed to be doing in the first place?
That's a good question. I think that part of it is the priorities, frankly, that have been set by this administration. But more broadly, I think there is something in kind of the nature of our bureaucracy as it's evolved over the course of decades that kind of becomes, about perpetuating itself, and particular agencies, once they're established, kind of have this self-preservation instinct, and so they sort of find things to do, even if it's not within the scope of their original authorization. What we've seen with the FAA and others is maybe just kind of an extreme manifestation of that tendency, and it's why I think that one of the most important things for our country is to really, modernize our bureaucracies and make it so they're more narrowly focused on specific missions that pertain to legitimate public interest, and not kind of like these behemoths that take on a life of their own and get in the way of productive activity.
It's interesting too. They were only asking to go from 36 to 50 launches, which isn't that much more. And you said that this has been going on for a few months behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was, I think, in August that we wrote the letter in support of the request. And then, they just came out with this decision a few days ago.
Wow. And so SpaceX has filed a lawsuit. Where do you think it goes from here?
I think they're going to win that lawsuit. It's pretty clearly a violation of the First Amendment to withhold sort of a government approval on the basis of someone exercising their free speech rights in pertaining to completely different topics, by the way. So I think at the end of the day, this will get approved, or they will in one way or another be able to move forward with it. There's just too much support for what they want to do. And for this, for these six completely, wayward commissioners to ultimately stand in the way. And I'll add, by the way, that California has passed a number of measures recently that have been struck down by the courts on First Amendment grounds. So there's a certain track record here of our state's governmental authorities not being respectful of the First Amendment and of freedom of speech. So I think this lawsuit is very well grounded. I'm very glad it was filed.
Are you worried about government red tape and regulation maybe holding us back so much that China or other countries do beat us to the moon or, big milestones?
Well, that is one of the risks, for sure. I mean, we have so much of a lead right now, thanks to SpaceX, that, I don't think it would happen anytime soon. But if we do continue to get in our own way, when, they're sort of empowering the agencies and companies that are looking to do the same thing, then yeah, that will ultimately put us at a disadvantage. And this is a true statement, not just when it comes to space, but when it comes to many other facets of our economy and technology. And we can point to a number of other examples where sort of, we're holding back progress in this country because of an overly bureaucratic approach to regulation. It's actually been kind of fun getting to interact with people like you who are really following all of this very closely. And like SpaceX has so many fans who are just like, following everything that goes on. And so I think that's pretty cool. Like the the folks who are actively sharing information about what's going on, who are getting the word out. So yeah, I just say please continue to tell these stories, and I'll certainly try to use my platform too to make sure to try to increase public awareness about what's going on, because I think it's one of the things that should be able to unite us as a country, right? Is when we have so many political divisions that seem to get worse in a lot of ways. Being able to take pride in this extraordinary accomplishment and in these goals, reaching the moon, reaching Mars, that really transcend any of the divisions we have. I think that's a really healthy thing. So the more we can focus on that, I think that the better it is for our country.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if Elon wasn't, the head of SpaceX, or if he hadn't supported President Trump, if people would all unite on this. I don't know, probably, but maybe not. I don't know. There's a lot of haters out there.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the the Apollo program and that did to the country, I think that this has similar potential, and I think that folks at the end of the day will understand that this isn't about whether they agree or disagree with certain political views of one particular individual. It's something much, much larger than that. And I think that, we got a glimpse of that feeling when people actually saw the videos from this past weekend, when we weren't just talking about this as some theoretical launch or what have you. When they saw it with their own eyes, then that really just kind of overpowered everything else.
I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I really appreciate Kevin giving me some of his time, and it's really nice to see people standing up for SpaceX and for what is right. Also, for a limited time, I have reopened my store, so if you didn't get a chance to order a Mechazilla shirt from the Ellie in Space store, you can do that, and I will leave the link in the description of this video. Thanks so much for watching and supporting my channel. I'll see you in the next one.